If you think the truth is too dark to handle, hit subscribe, like, and comment right now, because what you're about to hear doesn't usually make it past the island's gates. The body washed up along the jagged shoreline of Rikers Island just after dawn, turning the cold gray of early morning into something far more unsettling. The officer who first spotted it had been checking the perimeter fence line, half awake and irritated at the biting wind cutting across the East River. He expected driftwood, maybe trash, but the moment he saw the pale shape turning in the water, he froze. By the time emergency responders dragged the body out onto the rocks, the tide had already done its grim work. Clothes shredded, hands bruised, lips split. But the detail that rattled the first responders most wasn't the damage. It wasn't even the fact that the body belonged to an inmate reported missing from Rikers just 3 days earlier. It was a message carved, deliberately and carefully, into the thin sheet still wrapped around him. Stop talking. The letters ran crude and deep, as if someone had carved them with a smuggled razor. And suddenly, the entire island felt on edge. Detective Marcella Vance of the NYPD's Corrections Crimes Task Group stepped off the ferry with a grim expression, her badge hanging around her neck and her eyes locked on the prison compound ahead of her. Even on a normal day, the island felt isolated, a self-contained pressure cooker of tension and concrete. Today, though, it buzzed with something heavier, fear disguised as routine. Officers walked faster than usual. Doors slammed harder. Conversations cut to whispers when Marcella passed. Her partner for the investigation, Agent Terrence Ward, a federal liaison assigned to the case, approached from the security checkpoint. "You saw the report?" he said, adjusting the folder under his arm. Marcella nodded. Elijah Boone, age 28, nonviolent offender, missing 3 days, shows up dead with a warning carved into a sheet. She paused. Rikers claims they had no idea how he got off the island. Ward gestured for her to follow. "And that's why we're here. Boone wasn't just any inmate. What's special about him?" Ward lowered his voice. He filed a formal complaint 1 week before he disappeared. Said inmates were communicating with their families through channels that weren't authorized by the facility. He claimed the system was being manipulated. Marcella stopped walking. Manipulated by who? Ward's jaw clenched. He wouldn't say, only wrote, "If I talk more, it'll cut the line." Marcella exhaled sharply. And now he's the one who got cut. They began inside the primary administration wing, where Warden Preston Hale greeted them with a stiff handshake and forced calm, though the tremor in his voice betrayed him. "We run a secure facility," Hale insisted. "Contraband communication methods are a constant problem, but nothing like what Boone suggested." He was paranoid. Most inmates are. Marcella studied the warden's face. Paranoia doesn't make bodies wash up with warnings carved into their linens. Hale's jaw tightened. "Detective, this is a jail, not a spy ring. Inmates communicate officially through monitored calls, emails to the secure kiosk system, video visitation, and letters. That's it." Ward crossed his arms. "That's what should be happening." But Boone said something else was going on. Something invisible. Hale's expression hardened. Then he was mistaken. Marcella locked eyes with him. Or someone didn't want him talking. The warden didn't respond. Not with words. Their first stop was Housing Unit F6B, the block where Boone was last seen. The unit buzzed with mid-morning noise. Doors slamming. Officers moving across the tier. Inmates pacing or sitting silently on their beds. But the moment Marcella and Ward stepped in, conversation died. Almost immediately, inmates retreated, drifting away from them like a wave rolling back from shore. Officer Gina Calderon, a veteran of 16 years inside Rikers, met them in front of Boone's old cell. "He kept to himself," she said. "Didn't start trouble. Didn't join gangs. He had a daughter on the outside. Said he was trying to stay clean for her." Marcella leaned into the cell. Nothing remained but a thin mattress, a folded blanket, and a small metal table. Did Boone receive regular calls? Marcella asked. Calderon swallowed. Not through official systems. But that's not unusual. Phone time fills up fast. But he found a way somehow. "How do you know?" Ward asked. Calderon flicked her eyes toward the upper tier, speaking low. Because he told me he spoke to his daughter every night. Marcella frowned. But he never used the call log. Exactly. Ward made a slow turn, scanning the faces watching them through bars and cracked cell windows. Someone here was listening. Someone here was scared. What about letters? Marcella asked. Visits? Messages passed through other inmates. Calderon shook her head. He swore it wasn't that. Said he was using a line no one could shut down. Ward murmured. A line? As in communication. Calderon nodded grimly, and he said that if the wrong people found out he knew about it, they'd end him. Marcella leaned closer. Did he ever say who those people were? Before Calderon could answer, something clattered from the far tier. A metal cup. It hit the floor and rolled in circles. Inmate faces shifted quickly away. Calderon inhaled sharply. I think someone wants me to stop talking. Marcella and Ward moved deeper into the unit, approaching an inmate who seemed far less afraid than the others. 6'3", heavily tattooed, arms folded across his chest. His name was Damon Pike, and he was known for being Boone's closest neighbor. Marcella stopped in front of the cell. Damon Pike. He smirked. Depends who's asking. Ward showed his badge. Pike's grin faded. Marcella gestured around the tier. No one here wants to talk about how Boone communicated with his family. You want to be different? Pike raised an eyebrow. Different gets you dead in here. Marcella didn't blink. So does silence. Pike tapped his fingers against the bars, thinking. Then he stepped forward slowly. You really want to know why they shut him up? He whispered. Marcella nodded. He found the old line. Pike paused. The one they don't monitor. Ward stiffened. What line? Pike glanced left and right, then spoke so quietly they had to lean in. There's a wire system inside this place older than the new phone kiosks. They used it back in the 70s and 80s. Buried behind walls. Ran through maintenance tunnels. Don't know how he found it, but Boone figured out it still connects off-island. Marcella frowned. To where? A chilling smile crawled across Pike's face. To whoever still has access to the old infrastructure. And whoever those people are, they don't like being listened to. Ward replied, You're saying the system is still active? Pike tapped the side of his head. Active enough for someone to threaten me at 2 a.m. when I told Boone to stop using it. Marcella's breath caught. Threaten you how? Pike leaned closer. Let's just say someone whispered my daughter's name back to me. And I never told a soul her name in here. Ward stiffened. So, someone on the outside communicated with you through this line. Pike nodded. Yeah, and it wasn't no inmate. And it wasn't anyone I recognized. Marcella narrowed her eyes. Then who? Pike swallowed hard. That's the part that scares me. The voice sounded like... A harsh alarm cut through the air, drowning out his words. Officers ran toward the far side of the unit. Marcella and Ward were forced to move back as the tier erupted in chaotic noise. What now? Ward muttered. Calderon rushed past. They found something in Boone's old storage bin. Something that shouldn't exist. The storage room sat behind a locked steel door, cluttered with boxes, old clothing, confiscated materials, and discarded inmate property waiting for release or destruction. Officers had already roped off the area. Calderon led Marcella and Ward to the back wall. There, resting on a dented metal shelf, was a small, ancient-looking device, a rusted metal box with peeling wires and a cracked speaker grill. Marcella's eyes narrowed. What is that? Calderon crossed her arms. Maintenance says it hasn't existed in use since 1989. Ward crouched to inspect it. Is it connected to anything? Calderon shook her head. It was buried under Boone's things. Marcella straightened slowly. So Boone was using this to communicate outside the island. Calderon exhaled. Looks that way. Ward studied the device carefully. This is a relay box. Old telecommunications equipment. If it still works, it could theoretically connect to old wiring circuits. Marcella asked, how much of that wiring is still in the building? Calderon hesitated. Some hidden in the walls, some behind sealed maintenance areas. Ward stood, meaning someone inside the facility or someone with access to old infrastructure could use it. Marcella turned to Calderon. Who knew this box existed? The officer's silence said everything. Finally, Calderon whispered, people who've been here a long time, longer than most. Some staff, maybe maintenance, maybe outside contractors. Marcella's voice hardened. Anyone who might want to keep inmates quiet? Calderon didn't meet her eyes. Then, before anyone could say more, the cracked speaker on the ancient device crackled to life. For a moment, no one breathed. A faint voice, distorted and whispering, came through the old grill. You shouldn't have opened it. Everyone in the room froze. Calderon backed up. That thing isn't supposed to work. Marcella stepped closer. Who is this? A pause. A soft hiss. Then the voice returned. Still whispering. Still calm. Still unmistakably aware. Boone talked. Now you're listening. And listening is dangerous. Ward's face went pale. This is live. Someone's sending this now. A slow, deliberate breath came through the speaker, as if the person on the other end were standing inches away. Check the vent behind the tool cabinet. Marcella immediately looked to her right. A rusted tool cabinet stood against the wall, dust and cobwebs around its base. Ward whispered, he wants us to move it. Marcella replied, or he wants us to see something. Carefully, she and Ward pulled the cabinet aside. Dust swirled into the air. Behind it was a small maintenance vent, its screws removed, its grate hanging loose. Inside the dark space, something glinted. Marcella reached in with a gloved hand and pulled it out slowly. It was a phone. A real, functioning smartphone. Clean, untouched, fully charged. The lock screen flickered on. A message notification blinked across it, sent minutes earlier. Boone wasn't the only one talking. Marcella stared at the phone in her hand. And then another notification appeared. You're next. The speaker cut out. The room fell silent. And Marcella felt, deep in her chest, that this case was about to become far more dangerous than anyone on the island had realized. Because whoever was communicating with inmates was now communicating with her. A cold metallic clang traveled down the corridors of Rikers Island, echoing through concrete like a warning from the building itself. Lieutenant Marissa Vega felt it before she heard it. That shift in atmosphere, the invisible tightening of the air, the way the inmates' voices dropped into hushed, watchful silence. Rikers had moods, just like people, and tonight the jail felt restless. She stood in the middle of the visiting center's administrative corridor, staring at the sealed evidence bag in her hand. Inside it was a note found in Sean Barlow's cell, the one discovered in the final seconds of Chapter 1. The one that said, Tuesday, the phone room, don't be late. The handwriting was half-formed, shaky, but something about it felt purposeful, like someone trying to copy another person's writing style. A setup, a warning, or both. Vega turned the bag over, scanning the edges. The message wasn't written on standard Riker stationery. It was on a small rectangle of thin, waxy paper, exactly the type used to wrap sandwiches in the jail kitchen. Someone had passed this note through the food line. Someone with access. Someone who knew how messages traveled through cracks in the system. Vega exhaled slowly. Sean, what the hell were you involved in? Before she could continue analyzing, the radio on her shoulder crackled. Lieutenant Vega, respond. We have a situation in the North Tower, family call wing, a disturbance involving inmate Barlow. You need to see this. Her eyes snapped open. Sean Barlow? Again? She didn't waste a second. She ran. The call wing. The door burst open with a crash, and Vega stepped into chaos. Not violent chaos, but the tense, suffocating silence of something gone badly wrong. 3 correction officers stood around a phone booth, their faces pale. Sean Barlow sat in the plastic chair, hunched over as if sleeping, the receiver still dangling from his hand. But he wasn't asleep. He was staring at the wall, frozen, trembling, eyes wide with the kind of dread Vega recognized instantly. A trauma response. Barlow, she said softly, approaching. Look at me. He didn't blink, didn't react. His hand shook around the phone receiver. Vega motioned the officers away and leaned close. Sean, What happened? He swallowed hard. His voice cracked, barely audible. They told me not to talk. Who? Sean's lips trembled. He slowly lifted a shaking finger and pointed toward the row of phones. But he wasn't pointing at a person. He was pointing at the cord, the thick, coiled black wire. Vega frowned. The cord? Sean nodded. They used it. A cold, prickling wave washed over her skin. Used it how? His voice shrank to a whisper. To send a message. Vega's eyes narrowed. Sean, I need you to be clear. But before she could finish, he whispered a single sentence that made her heart stop. It wasn't a phone call, it was a code. The hidden language. Vega pulled the recording logs immediately. Every inmate call at Rikers was monitored and recorded. Yet Sean's line showed no active call at the time he was found. No outgoing. No incoming. Just an open line. A dead, silent connection. The system says nobody dialed out. Officer Duran said, confused. But the phone buzzed like it was live. He was speaking to someone. Not speaking, Vega corrected. Listening. She replayed the recording. Static. Soft hum. A faint clicking noise. Rhythmic. Deliberate. Like tapping. Like someone striking metal against plastic in a specific pattern. Is that Morse code? Duran asked. Vega leaned in. The pattern was too structured to be random interference. What's the translation? He asked nervously. Vega didn't answer because she didn't know, but she intended to find out. Sean Barlow sat on the medical cot nearby, wrapped in a blanket, his eyes still distant. She approached him again. Sean, the tapping noises, did you understand what they were saying? He nodded slowly. What did the message say? He hesitated, then whispered, Don't run for what you owe. Vega felt something cold settle in her stomach. This wasn't about debts, not in the usual sense. Not commissary debts or gambling debts. Something bigger. What do they think you owe? Sean's voice cracked. Information? What kind? He looked up at her for the first time. The kind that gets people killed. The contraband officer. 2 hours later, Vega stood in the contraband review office watching boxes of confiscated items being cataloged. Hidden phones, improvised tools, handwritten codes. The usual collection of forbidden creativity. Officer Leon Price approached her with a tablet in hand. I cross-checked the phone booth logs with staff entry records like you asked. And Price flicked the screen. Someone accessed the call wing service panel 5 minutes before Barlow had his episode. Vega leaned closer. Who? That's the thing, Price said, lowering his voice. The log says it was opened with a master key, but the system shows no staff member with clearance in that area at the time. Someone bypassed a log? Or someone wanted it to look like no one was there. Vega clenched her jaw. And there's something else, Price added. We found this inside the panel. He held up a small plastic device, a homemade transmitter clipped to the internal wires of the phone system. What is that? Vega asked. A signal injector. It can override the line and play pre-recorded sounds. Taps, clicks, even voices. You can send messages through the phone without ever making a call. Vega stared at it. So someone inside Rikers is using the phone network to send coded messages to inmates, she said. And they chose Sean Barlow as their next target. Price nodded grimly. Not chosen. Pressured. Pressured into what? Price shrugged uneasily. Whatever they think, he hasn't delivered. A secret in the air room. Later that night, Vega searched the maintenance wing, hoping to find where the signal injector originated. The hallway lights flickered. The air smelled stale, tinged with metal and damp insulation. She entered the air handling room, a cavernous, echoing space where giant fans thrummed behind wire cages. This place connected every block in the North Tower. Every voice, every sound carried through here. As she walked deeper, her flashlight beam brushed against something on the wall. She froze. It was a marking, scratched into the paint, a symbol, a circle with 3 short lines emerging from the bottom. She took a closer look. It wasn't random. It wasn't graffiti. It was the exact same symbol drawn in the margins of the note found in Sean Barlow's cell. The symbol from the food paper. The symbol marking Tuesday. The symbol pointing to the phone room. Someone had been here. Someone who used this hidden space to monitor the ventilation shafts, the phone wiring, the maintenance tunnels, all the quiet, unseen pathways inside Rikers Island. Someone who could send messages without being seen. Behind her, a soft metallic click echoed. Vega whipped around, flashlight raised. At first, she saw nothing. Then a shadow shifted behind the far ventilation grate. Too fast, too intentional to be imagination. "Hey!" she shouted. "Stop right there." Her voice bounced through the chamber. A figure darted past the grate. She ran. The chase in the vent tunnel. Vega sprinted down the corridor, boots pounding the concrete, heart slamming against her ribs. The ventilation corridor was narrow and dim, stretching like a concrete artery beneath the jail. The figure's footsteps echoed ahead, quick, agile, unmistakably familiar with the layout. They turned a corner. Vega followed, and then skidded to a halt. The corridor split into 3 branching tunnels. The footsteps stopped. Silence. Then a tap, sharp, deliberate, followed by 2 more taps. Then 3. Her pulse spiked. The exact same rhythm from the phone call. She stepped back, hand instinctively going to her belt, though she didn't draw anything. She knew better than to escalate without clarity. Then, from the darkness of the left tunnel, a low voice echoed, distorted by the metal walls. "Lieutenant Vega." Her breath caught. "You're asking questions," the voice said. "Questions that were never meant to be answered." "Come out and talk," Vega demanded, keeping her tone even. "Nobody has to get hurt." The voice gave a short, humorless laugh. "Nobody's getting hurt. Not yet." Her grip tightened. "What do you want?" she called out. "To keep the system running," the voice replied. "To keep the lines open. To keep people communicating our way." Vega's jaw clenched. "You're interfering with federal monitoring systems. You're threatening inmates. You injected signals into the call network. That's a federal crime. Rikers is full of crimes, Lieutenant. The difference is..." The voice stopped abruptly, then whispered, "Some of us know why Sean Barlow really came here." Vega's pulse jumped. "Why did he come here?" she pressed. Silence. Then footsteps. Running. Away from her. She tried to follow, but the tunnel was too dark, the labyrinth too disorienting. Within seconds, the figure was gone. Sean's truth. Back in the medical wing, Vega confronted Sean. "Someone is going through a lot of trouble to scare you," she said. "And I need to know why." Sean stared at the floor. "Sean," she said, voice firm but calm, "if you don't tell me, I can't protect you." He swallowed, and finally spoke. "I wasn't supposed to be here," he said quietly. "They transferred me last minute. Someone arranged it. Someone who wanted access to me." "Why?" Sean's eyes filled with dread. "Because I'm the only one who knows how this whole place stays connected." Vega frowned. "Connected how?" Sean slowly lifted his gaze. "I used to work in telecom," he said. "Cell towers, frequency mapping, secure signal routing. Before I got locked up, some people reached out to me. They wanted blueprints for how to set up a communication web inside a jail. A silent one. Invisible. Untouchable." Vega's pulse sped up. "And you gave it to them?" "No," he whispered. "I refused." "Then how do they have it?" Sean's hand shook violently. "Because they stole it before I could destroy the plans." Vega stepped closer. "Who stole it?" Sean looked her dead in the eyes and said the words that shattered the investigation open. "A correction officer. Someone inside the jail." Vega froze. "Do you know who?" Sean nodded. "Yeah," he whispered. "I know exactly who." Vega leaned in, waiting for the name, but Sean didn't speak. Instead, his eyes widened. He stared past her. Behind her, Vega spun around and saw the sealed envelope sitting on the medical cart. It hadn't been there 30 seconds ago. Her heart pounded as she stepped toward it. The envelope was thin, white, unmarked, except for one thing. The same symbol, a circle with 3 lines, drawn on the front. Her breath caught as she tore it open. Inside was a single sheet of paper, a single sentence, a single threat. The officer you trust most already chose a side. Vega's blood ran cold, and at the bottom of the page was a timestamp. Tuesday, midnight. The day wasn't over yet, and someone inside Rikers Island had just declared the next move. Midnight hit Rikers Island like a slow, suffocating wave, the kind that seeped through the walls, settled on the floor, and hung in the air long before the clock struck 12. The corridors felt different at that hour. Empty but not quiet. Still but not calm. Lieutenant Marissa Vega moved to the North Tower with her badge tucked inside her jacket, her boots hitting the floor with soft, deliberate footfalls. She wasn't flanked by officers. She wasn't accompanied by command staff. She didn't want backup. Not until she knew who she could trust. The message had been clear. The officer you trust most already chose a side. The threat wasn't vague. It wasn't abstract. It was personal. And tonight, she was the one walking into the unknown. The meeting point. The timestamp on the note led her to the phone room service corridor, a narrow maintenance hall behind the inmate calling booths, where tangled wires ran like exposed veins, and the air always smelled faintly of dust and old electronics. Her flashlight beam slid across the metal doors, the low ceiling, the walls vibrating with the distant hum of machinery. This was where the messages were intercepted, where the signals were injected, where someone had built a silent communication network inside one of the most heavily monitored jails in the United States. Vega checked her watch. 11:59 p.m. She exhaled slowly. The second hand ticked toward midnight. She reached instinctively toward her radio, hesitated, then pulled her hand back. Turning it on could alert the wrong person. Turning it off could isolate her at the worst possible moment. She left it on but kept it silent. Midnight. Midnight. Nothing happened. No footsteps. No voices. No phone ringing with a coded signal. Just silence. But Vega knew better than to assume silence meant safety. She moved deeper. The shadow in the dark. At the far end of the hall, a small, rectangular control box sat open. The same model where Officer Price found the signal injector. But this one wasn't empty. Inside were 3 devices. One red, one yellow, one blue, stacked neatly, waiting. Her breath caught. These weren't random tools. They were frequency bridges. Equipment used to bounce data through insulated wiring, the kind of contraband someone would need professional-level knowledge to build. Sean's knowledge. Sean's field. Someone had replicated his work perfectly. She leaned closer. The red device blinked. Once, then twice, then faster. Her pulse spiked. The blinks weren't random. They formed a pattern. 3 fast, 2 slow, 3 fast. Morse code. The same pattern from the phone call. Vega took a step back. A soft voice behind her said, "You're early." She spun around. The beam of her flashlight cut through the dark into a face she recognized instantly. Officer Leon Price. The same officer who had helped her identify the signal injector. The same officer who had walked her through maintenance logs. The same officer she had trusted without thinking twice. The officer the note warned her about. He leaned against the doorframe with a calm, unreadable expression. "Relax," he said quietly. "Nobody's here to hurt you." "Then why come at midnight?" Vega asked, keeping her voice steady. "Why all the coded messages? Why target Sean Barlow?" Price exhaled, a tired, almost disappointed breath. "Because Sean made a mistake." "What mistake?" "He thought refusing them would make him safe." "Them?" Vega asked. "Who's them?" Price smiled faintly. Not cruel, not mocking, just resigned. "The same people who make this island run. When the lights go out and the cameras glitch. The same people who keep prisoners talking to their families, even when the official channels fail. The same people who build a whole network in the shadows because the real one was too slow, too restricted, too unreliable." Vega's eyes narrowed. "You're not describing criminals. You're describing infrastructure. I'm describing reality. Price corrected. A jail this big doesn't survive without unofficial pathways. You built the system, Vega said slowly. Not Sean. No, Price said. We built it together, years ago, before he walked away. Vega's breath caught. So you and Sean were partners, not in crime, in engineering. He nodded toward the devices behind her. He designed the blueprint. I built the application. And now, Vega asked, and now he wants out, Price said. But walking away from something this integrated isn't simple. Too many people depend on it. Depend, Vega repeated, or exploit. He didn't answer, because the answer was both. The true purpose. Price stepped forward until he was illuminated by the dim corridor light. This wasn't supposed to be some sinister web, Vega. It was supposed to help people. Inmates with no family access. Parents trying to talk to their kids. People who aren't dangerous, just forgotten. So, how did it turn into coded threats? Vega asked. Price's jaw tightened. Because someone else got involved. Vega felt her heartbeat quicken. Who? He took a long breath. Officer Camden. Vega froze. Officer Camden was one of the most respected staff on the island. A 20-year veteran. A mentor to younger COs. A calm presence during crises. He found the system, Price explained. Figured out how it worked. Figured out how to use it. For what? Vega asked. For leverage, Price said. For influence. For access. For the kind of information people will pay for. A chill ran down Vega's spine. So he turned communication into currency. Yes. And you let him? Price clenched his fists. I didn't know at first. By the time I did, Camden already had control. The network wasn't mine anymore. That's why Sean backed out. He wanted it shut down. And Camden wanted him silenced. Yes. Vega took a slow, controlled breath. So tonight is what? A trap? A scare tactic? Price shook his head. A negotiation. With who? Camden, Price said, and he's already here. The turn. A slow clap echoed from the shadows. Vega's stomach dropped. Officer Camden stepped into the corridor with the quiet confidence of a man who had never once considered losing. Lieutenant, he said smoothly, you've been busy. Vega's posture tightened. You compromise a federal monitoring system for personal gain. Camden chuckled softly. Spare me the moral outrage. This place runs on side channels. You know that better than anyone. Vega kept her voice steady. You threatened an inmate. I warned him, Camden corrected. He has information that can hurt a lot of people. Sometimes warnings are necessary. You're done, Vega said firmly. Both of you. The system ends tonight. Camden's smile faded. It ends when I say it does. He stepped closer. No weapons, no aggression, just ruthless confidence. You can shut down one device. Maybe two, but you can't erase everything. The network is inside the walls. The wiring, the vents, the phone lines. Pull one piece out, the others shift. Break it, and you break the whole communication system. Price swallowed hard, looking genuinely conflicted. Camden, he said quietly, this isn't what we built. Camden didn't even glance at him. It's what it became. And what about Vega? Price asked softly. She didn't come here to negotiate. She came here to expose us. Camden finally turned to Vega and said the words that cut her like a blade. She already has. Vega's pulse jumped. What do you mean? Camden stepped aside. Behind him, a camera lens glinted in the corner of the ceiling. Not a jail camera. A portable one. A wireless transmitter blinking red. Everything in the corridor, every word, every revelation, was being broadcast, recorded, archived, for external monitoring. Price's face went pale. You're streaming this? Camden smiled slowly. No, he said. She is. Vega's blood chilled as she realized. Her radio. Still on. Still transmitting. Someone on the outside, command staff, investigators, oversight, was hearing everything. She hadn't walked into a trap. She had walked into a confession, a dismantling of the system, all without drawing a weapon or escalating a single step. Camden's eyes darkened as he finally understood, too. "You played me," he whispered. Vega didn't move. "I didn't have to," she said. "You played yourself." The collapse. Footsteps thundered down the hall. Command staff, internal affairs, oversight supervisors. The corridor filled with officials within seconds. Camden lifted his hand slowly, resignation settling across his face. Price's shoulders slumped, relief and regret mingling in equal measure. Vega stood in silence, watching, listening, letting the system pull itself apart. Sean Barlow was escorted out minutes later, shaken but safe. The frequency devices were seized. The ventilation tunnels were locked down. The Midnight Network was dismantled wire by wire. And as Camden was led away, he paused